Welcome everyone to our webinar tonight on vacant land. Excited to be talking about this. We've been discussing having a training on this for quite some time, and I think we didn't have enough time last week to go ahead and cover this topic, and I know a lot of you are needing some education on this. So we're going to go ahead and get going. You guys are in for a treat. At the very end, we're going to actually role play and work through writing up a vacant land purchase and sale. So I'm hoping that we have good Wi-Fi and good coverage today. You never know on some of these Zoom sessions, but thanks for jumping on. If you do have questions or comments, our group is pretty active. You're welcome to send. We opened up the chat box. You're welcome to send chats to each other. And we do record and post this on our YouTube channel when we're done. So if you do have a special question or you need to ask something, be sure to shoot a question in the chat box or send me an email after the webinar, and I'll be happy to reach out and give you some more help. But love to jump in, and if you go to the next slide, that would be great, Shannon. So we're going to tonight talk about vacant land. So there is a different purchase and sale contract that you need to be familiar with. It's not the Form 21. Anything that does not have a structure on it, you would need to use a Form 25. That becomes challenging, especially when you might have a manufactured home or some shed or some outbuilding. You'll probably need to contact me if you're unsure if there is some sort of structure on the vacant land on what purchase and sale agreement you would use. But if it's vacant or raw land that does not have any structures on it, clearly you want to use a Form 25. We'll go through that later on in the webinar. The other question I get asked a lot of times is, what feasibility contingency do I use? Do I use the 22LA or do I use 35F? And the answer is really determined on what county or what area you work. Some counties are used to seeing the 22LA. That would be more of like Clallam County up near the border. In areas where there's a lot of negotiation that takes place about how to develop the land, it has more to it on 22LA. Where 35F, I would say King, Pierce, Snohomish, we don't see the 22LA. Most often, we usually just see a 35F. It's usually just a simple addendum that for you guys that are used to kind of memorization, instead of using a 35 for the inspection of the structure, in essence, you would remove that and you would not use that in vacant land purchase and sales. You would actually use the 35F. So again, if based on the county, you might want to pick up the 22LA and read it. We're going to go through the simple way just for the interest of time. I'll build it based on some land on the sample that we have it here in King County. And so again, King, Pierce, Snohomish, use 35F. Do you use 22LA and 35F? No, that would not be the typical thing to do. You either pick one or the other. The other thing that a lot of people ask me is about price. Like, what should I offer on price? And what about commission if I'm listing a piece of vacant land? Vacant land, because the price point sometimes is less than things with structures, the commission might be higher. We can't price fix, so I can't tell you what to charge or what should the seller compensate those buyer's agents, but I am seeing that kind of commission, the commission across the board. So you want to talk with your seller and ask them what price or what listing price that they want to offer. You may have to go back in time in order to get valid comparables. Vacant land on average takes longer to sell than, say, something with a structure on it. So it's okay when you're doing a CMA to go back, not just the 3 months or 6 months with sales. You might have to go back a year, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, as a company, we don't have a determination of how long to take the listing when you list a vacant land parcel. But best rule of thumb would be it does take you longer to sell vacant land on average. Although we've had some great success stories in our office recently with vacant land parcels that have gone in the first week or two on the market. On average, though, vacant land will take twice as long as, say, a regular structure on a property. So give yourself some more time when you take a listing with vacant land. It's okay to take a term of an entire year. or to ask for longer in order for that vacant land to properly be marketed and sold. As far as price, you do a CMA just like you would, but again, we're not comparing structured properties, or we're comparing properties that maybe had like a manufactured home that would have been demised. Then maybe you want to compare that, say, to your vacant parcel, but you want to kind of only consider like kind properties. With the earnest money deposit, Form 31 is very common. In fact, I'll go through and kind of explain how you put that into practice. Most of the vacant land parcels, we're seeing with people who are seasoned in doing vacant land, because there's so much going on with the land parcel as far as the buyer's obligations to do feasibility and to do studies. They often see that as the skin in the game, or actually showing the seller that they're serious. So oftentimes one of the negotiable items on the purchase and sale agreement is utilizing earnest money in the form of a note that would be due and payable after feasibility has been removed. And I'll explain what that looks like when we write up the contract. But that is very common on the addenda line to include a Form 31 for earnest money. And I'll explain how we apply that later on. Next slide. So we're going to do an exercise, but before we do that, if you can go to the next slide, Shannon, I think was there one more slide? Flip one more. Yep, there we go. Setting expectations. So before I jump in and do the exercise, I want to make sure that you guys understand clearly from a firm standpoint, and from if you're going to handle vacant land, what expectations you should be setting with your client. I never want to put myself in harm's way where I don't have any kind of experience. I don't want you writing up contracts or working with a client if you're not familiar or you have not been properly trained. I'd rather have you refer that business to, say, another broker. I was on a call recently with several designated brokers, and one of the things that one of the designated brokers asked was, does anybody have any experience in selling vacant land in Newcastle? And quickly, one designated broker said, yeah, absolutely. What kind of referral rate do you want to charge? A referral rate can be anywhere from 20 to 40% for that referral. So if you have experience, make sure you let people know you have experience in handling vacant land purchase and sale agreements, because there is a lot of brokers out there in our area who do not have the experience or know how to set proper expectations, or maybe just don't want to make that part of their business, where they're willing to pay you a referral fee to handle that client or set those proper expectations. So if you're unsure, or the parcel is too big, or the scope is too large, be sure you reach out to me. I might be able to put you in touch with somebody in our firm that can help, or refer it out to another broker that can maybe help you. But just on the kind of just give you a highlight level of, if I was representing a buyer, I want to set expectations about what I will do as their broker. So as we go, before we write it up, I'm going to pretend that Shannon is my buyer who's interested in this vacant land parcel. We actually have it listed. Michelle Miller has the listing right now. It is an active parcel. Got a phone call on it this morning, so I really want to show you through practice how this would work. So Shannon, let's go role play. You're calling about the piece of land, and I'll just keep this on the screen so we can kind of make sure we keep this all in perspective. So go ahead, ring, ring.
Hello. Ring, ring, ring.
Hi.
Hi, I am interested in this property out in Kent. I saw it was listed. I saw a sign out in front of it.
Oh, awesome. Which, do you have the property address? Again, side note, you guys, a lot of these things don't have proper addresses. So you're going to need to get more information, like an MLS number or more information about the parcel. Can you tell me more about where you saw this and if there was an address?
It was out there in Kent. I think it was like 362nd or something like that. 352nd maybe.
Okay. Well, what can I tell you about the property? That is one of our listings.
Well, I don't know much about it. I just saw it online. I live just around the corner from it. And I'm potentially wanting to build a house on it so I can be closer to my grandkids.
Awesome. You don't have grandkids yet?
No.
Side note. Fantastic. Well, what I can tell you is that this is an active parcel, and we just listed the property just a few days ago. So we're excited to have this listing. And The seller has already done some of the tests. What exactly are you looking to do with the property? You said build?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think fancy. I mean, this is going to be a retirement home. So a rambler, 3 bedroom, 2 bath type of thing, super simple. I mean, I don't need,
Are you currently
um,
working with a real estate broker?
no, not right now.
Okay. Have you contacted a builder or a contractor to help you with this process?
No, but I figured I just want to buy the land now. And then even if I sit on it for a couple of years, I've got some time.
Okay. There's a lot of things that you'll want to consider when you actually take that vacant land and do something with it. So there are a checklist of items that I can send you of things you want to keep in mind. But as far as like getting information about, the negotiation with the seller, or having, a contract written that gives you time to do some of those checks or that feasibility, that's something that I can handle for you. Would that be something you'd be interested in?
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I just want to have an idea of what's going on with the land so that I can build. I mean, ultimately, if it's not a buildable property, I don't want it.
Right. No, I understand completely. What I can do for you today is let me, if you want to go drive by, if you haven't driven by, go walk the property. It's available. It is active. We don't have any offers on it currently, but if you are interested, I would be the one to contact so that we can put an offer together. But before I do that, let me go ahead and contact the listing agent and actually get the disclosures from the seller. And I already have the title and plat information, as well as some contacts for feasibility. And I'd be happy to send that to your email address. What's your email address? So I can get that over to you right now.
Okay. And my phone number is this, and my address is this.
Fantastic. So that's kind of how it works. You want to have a very fluid conversation. They already know the information about the price most of the time. They already know the information about how big the lot is because it's on all the websites. Again, you want to, as much as you can, set them up, set the expectations that they're responsible for reviewing the full plat. They're responsible for contacting the county or the city planners. They're responsible for making sure the utilities are going to work for them. They're the ones that are responsible for excavation, tree removal, wetland delineation, demolition, if there was site prep that needed to be done before they actually decide that this is the property for them. So that would be all on them. I would say I didn't give myself an A grade on that whole role play, but again, this is kind of the fluidity that you need to have with your potential buyers. Agent responsibility. Again, I talked with her about obtaining title and plat information and disclosures information from the seller. Those are our responsibilities to negotiate extensions if we needed to on the feasibility or the contract, or to, in essence, negotiate the terms of the contract, such as the earnest money. That is our responsibility. But no, we're not responsible to go and actually contact the county and the city planners. In fact, if you do that kind of work, you run the risk that you might be saying something that you cannot say, or that the city changes their mind. It might have been zoned a certain way, and then you got misinformed, and now they can sue you for malpractice. So there's that risk that you have by being too involved. So for me, if you really kind of lay out the boundaries from the very beginning and stay in your lane when it comes to negotiation, contracts, providing contacts, make sure you provide more than one contact, and then plat information, making sure you're connecting that buyer with the title company so they can ask those questions before they miss that feasibility window. That is your responsibility. But beyond that, I've had buyers get really frustrated. They've called me and they work with another company, not with Best Choice, saying, oh my gosh, can you believe that what this real estate broker did to me? And they basically say that they let their feasibility waive, and then they bought this piece of land they couldn't develop. They couldn't even do anything. And that's because they just let the extension lapse on the feasibility, and then now they're obligated to purchase. And so a lot of that vacant land gets churned. What I mean by that is they actually buy it, and then they may hold it for a year or two, and then all of a sudden it comes back on the market. Oftentimes it's because that seller who used to be that buyer was misinformed by what was possible with that piece of land. And they didn't do their due diligence and didn't do the research that we have here on the left. So as much as you can make that the client responsibility at the beginning, the better you're going to be at working with vacant land. Next slide. And then we'll just jump right in. Just another, so there are some couple of contacts. You might want to take this down. The landman is a great referral. We've referred business to him. He specializes in the Puget Sound region, and he's been doing this a long time. So if there's a lot of things going on and you're just like, I don't want to touch it, Rochelle, I just don't want to be put in that awkward position, you might want to negotiate a referral fee with the landman. The Lee McCallis, that is somebody that we have been provided, and he does a great job with doing the feasibility, but you have to at least have had the client go walk the land and determine what they're going to build. And he will do some of the checking, but you have to, mark the utilities. Shannon, you want to spend a little more time explaining what Lee will do recently?
Sure. So one of the things that I actually helped one of my clients, we actually backed out, but we were working on a vacant land. And I called Lee because I was kind of getting an understanding of what he was doing. And he recommended that before you even call him, his background is in county planning department. That's where he has his background in. So he advises that every buyer, they do call 811, mark the property, see if there's any existing lines that are on the property that affects excavation, look at the plat maps, work with the county, and then if you want to punch holes in the ground, say the Puget Sound Energy doesn't know whether or not there is an existing gas line, he can then potentially go punch some holes in the ground and see what's there.
And that's that flat fee that he charges, right, Shannon? I mean,
yeah, it's a ballpark though. I would plan on anywhere between 500 to 1,000, just depends on the type of property.
Okay, but that would save, I mean, thousands of dollars for like that scenario I gave where the agent didn't know during the feasibility contingency what was possible with stubbing it out, correct?
Right.
Okay. So the other thing that I want to bring your attention to is a lot of this vacant land is done off market, and you do need to use the correct forms when you're representing the seller or the buyer in an off market situation. If you remember from some of our other classes, 41C is used if it's not listed and you represent the buyer and you need the listing or the seller to pay the commission on an off market. Or the Form 47, if you represent the seller on a vacant land and you obviously need to get paid a commission for representing the seller. So 41C for buyer representation where you need a commission, or Form 47 if you represent the seller to get commission. And we see a lot of dual agency on vacant land. Remember, on vacant land, when we represent both buyer and seller, there are 2 transaction fees. So we treat those as 2 separate, and there is a lot of liability. And so we do have it set up, and there is insurance provided for both sides of the transaction. So you may want to think about that. And when you structure your offers on who do you represent and where do you want the liability to lie when you represent, in essence, one party or both. Let's go to the exercise, Shannon, if you want to pull up the MLS. We're actually going to write this vacant land that I was referring to earlier of Michelle Miller's. And I think we've got this queued up.
Just give me a second. I'll get it right up on the screen.
Bandwidth is low. Dang it. I was worried about that.
All right, here you go.
Okay, so this is an example of the Kent property we referenced earlier in the call. It has been on the market, so my role play was not right. It's been on the market for 126 days, but there has been a recent price drop. So in order to go to the history, it would probably be important to see when they dropped that price. So let's go to history, and it says they dropped the price on August 3rd. So wow, that's a pretty sizable drop from 58 to 48, a 10,000 drop in this for this particular land. And so we have an opportunity, where they just dropped this just a few weeks ago, where there might have been some supplements that were not provided. So another quick tip for you guys who are listing agents, who are listing vacant land, gather as much information as you possibly can from that seller, because those supplements help a buyer's agent be able to write it up. So Michelle has actually got the plat up now, the preliminary commitment, the legal description, and the site eval, which I believe is some sort of, you want to open that up, let's see what that looks like. I believe that is some sort of feasibility that was done on the property, which she can provide now. And again, they put 2, she blacked out, good job, Michelle, on blacking out who it was for. Again, this information is supplemental, but you can see who did the work, who actually went out to the property and dug 4 test holes. This is another guy, Westside Septic Design, for that septic perking that you would need to be done. So this is, again, does not encompass everything that would need to be done. It is up to the buyer to actually do some more evaluation to make sure that that property or that plat is going to work for them. So one of the things we'll ask the seller is make sure we need the Form 17, even though it does not have a structure, we do need the appropriate Form 17. And I would make sure that I get a copy of that before I write the offer. So that's just a side note. We're going to go ahead and actually write it though. Go ahead and click the transaction desk. So when you click that little transaction desk link, it will actually open up transaction desk and incorporate the MLS number, and it will bundle all of the documents or supplements so that when we send it for signature, we actually are gathering all of the pertinent information. For those of you who are new to the business, it's super important that you do it this way so that it actually syncs everything up for you. If you don't, you can still do it. You just have to download all those supplements and then you have to bring them on into your signing, and it just takes you more time. And as you can see, it takes about a minute in order for it to load everything correctly. And then when I'm sharing my screen, it's taking more time as well. So it's going to give it another minute. Well, while it's loading, Shannon, is there anything else we wanted to cover about the highlights of your particular situation?
I don't think so, but I think it's very important. One thing that I know that even with my sister having bought a property down in downtown Puyallup, if you're working with buyers, it's important for them. I mean, if they're wanting to build a residential house, to have a couple builders that they've already talked to, even if they're pending or looking at properties. Because one thing that she's like kicking herself over now when she's in the middle of a build right now, she's like, I should have involved my builder a lot sooner. I never would have thought of this. I never would have thought of that. So I think that's important for clients to get a builder's perspective, at least when they're looking for vacant land and they're wanting to build quite quickly. I think it's also important to note that when you're working with a vacant land, city requirements are very important, right? Because oftentimes they'll have additional permits that are required in addition to county permits.
Okay, good points. We didn't cover. Go to click template. So you're going to want to select vacant land sale. We're going to write this one up. Give Michelle some good mojo here. Click create. And you might just, because of the bandwidth, Shannon, we might just want to just pull up the PSA express forms. It's taking a long time to show transaction desk on the Zoom. Okay, maybe it's going to go. They used to call me Trigger for a reason. At least I used to get that nickname in some of my other offices because I just am so impatient with technology. I don't know if you feel the same way out there, but sometimes I just want to throw the technology out the window. It doesn't work as fast as I want it to be, but yeah, for this, we'll keep going here. The today's date would be today's date. So even if I wrote the offer and didn't submit it for a week, still is today's date. The offer expiration date, vacant land takes some time. So don't expect most of the vacant land. It's not like you're going to a property. Oftentimes you're actually negotiating with that seller who might be out of town or maybe an elderly, or know your situation and don't block yourself out by putting an offer expiration date that's going to expire next day. You might need some more time. So I'm going to go till Friday on the 21st to get a response. Let's see, closing date. I'm going to go ahead and do September, end of September. In fact, maybe just go into October. I don't like to be on the last day of the month. Let's go October 9th. Oh, that's good. That'll take care of it. And then the contacts, we have to add ourselves, add Shannon. So Shannon is our add
the buyer.
Add a buyer, yep. Create a new transaction contact. Okay, perfect. Anyone is fine. Just go to buyer. Just make sure there's a name and an email address. Yep, I lost my screen now.
Oops, sorry guys.
Okay, and yep, click next. And then step 4 is to select the items. We automatically already have our quick select forms turned on so that you guys will remember it's form 25. Now 22EF, you have to decide, am I getting financing for the land or am I paying cash? Vacant land is, you have to get a construction loan if you're going to do that. So most of the land that I'm seeing is either 22EF for cash, or we're seeing even payment terms. With some land that's taking a long time, oftentimes the seller may consider owner terms in order to get a buyer. So you got a couple choices with how you're going to structure the financing. We don't need the financing addendum. We do want the 22D because of the section 1 and then how title is taken. And then we do want I have the 35F in there. So if you want to go ahead and open 35F, this is the feasibility. You have 2 choices. If you don't like the 35F or you work in an area that doesn't use the 35F, they use the 22LA, just replace this one with it. You'll have to add a new form into the mix. And because we work mostly King, Pierce, Snohomish for the bulk of the sales that we've had in the last few years, I haven't had a chance to go in and add the 22LA, but you see that oftentimes. Now it says 10 days if not filled in. That doesn't give the buyer much time to contact utilities. So you want to have that conversation with the buyer and say, you know, like Shannon's talking about, this is her first time and she's never bought vacant land before. She's thinking about building. Might want to go 20 or 30 days. If you're up against multiple offers, you're going to lose every time. So be careful that you don't just, you know, ask the right questions. But go ahead and ask for 30 and let's see what they give us. Or 20, that works. If we check the box down there at the very on line 24, if checked, the agreement will terminate and the buyer will receive a refund of the earnest money. So if we check the box, the agreement will terminate on day 20 at 9 p.m. and then the earnest money gets refunded to the buyer. I don't like to check the box just because I want to be able to have that negotiable. I might need to ask for an extension, that type of thing. So I actually the box unchecked. Uncheck it, Jan. There you go. And now go to transaction forms. We're going to go back to the form, the purchase and sale agreement. Let's check the appropriate things on the form 25. So the way you'd fill out form 25, you do have to know your numbers on the addenda, and it automatically fill in the buyer's information. You do want to, you might want to, I mean, with vacant land, with my sister's property, I did a Shannon Hall test and we did and or assigns. We put that in the buyers. Go ahead and just type that on in, and or assigns. Yep. Just so that I know that if Shannon wasn't the one that could get the cash or could move things around, we actually appointed my other sister to purchase the vacant land and build. So again, you can use that. Again, vacant land, you have to be up to speed on some of these things that you might not be familiar with. The vacant land, we're going to offer full price because they just dropped the price. So we're going to go full price. If we find things out about the vacant land that doesn't check, like say that the septic doesn't perk, we may need to negotiate. Again, that's where your job comes into play, is you find out new information that was not forthcoming when they listed the property. Then that's an opportunity for you to either extend your feasibility or to negotiate the price. Earnest money, I'm going to go ahead and throw $1,000 at this. Yep. And then I'll go ahead and put it in a note. Nope, check the note box. Yep. And then held by the closing agent. And then the default is forfeiture, always, just like normal purchase and sale. And then the title, I don't remember who she opened title with, Shannon. I apologize.
I've got it open. First American.
First American. Good old Hector. I talked to Hector today. First American title. Yep. And then closing agent. Again, you can use who you want. That's negotiable, but make sure you always put in the individual. Sherry Backus, Cheri. There you go, Bakos. Yep, she's fantastic. She's right out of the Renton office. The closing date's there. Possessions on closing. Utilities, we want to go ahead and include that. the assumed by buyer or prepaid, always prepaid if we're negotiating for the buyer. Again, I don't check FERPTA unless I saw a FERPTA. I didn't see FERPTA listed, so I'm going to keep the box unchecked and request that the seller provide me the FERPTA. And it's not required to be subdivided. We know it's just a vacant lot, so we'll leave that box checked there. And then the feasibility, we check that and we match it to the same thing we did on the 35F. So that would be 20 days that we had on there. Did we do 20 or 30?
I can't remember.
And then we check the box that we represent the buyer. And then Michelle obviously represents the seller. And all the addenda needs to be filled in. So we need to put in 22D. So go ahead and work through it. Number 17, Shannon. Yep, 22D. Perfect. 31. Okay, 22K. 35F. Now, if the septic system was installed, then we actually would go ahead and put the, the appropriate King County or the appropriate disclosure. But since the septic has only been perked, or, the feasibility on that has been done, we keep the feasibility contingency in play. We don't need to worry about the addendum for the septic. That is part of feasibility. So any kind of tests that they need to do need to be within that 35F. Pretty much think of the 35F or the 22LA as your way to back out for any reason that the buyer's not happy with how it's going to check out. That's all you need there, Shannon. It's just a 22D, 31, and then we need the 22EF because we're paying cash.
And I know because people will ask this later, do you include a 22T, a title contingency as well?
If they haven't opened up title. Now it looked like she had, is that correct?
I think she did.
I believe she did with First American, and we would want to have that open. So yes, especially with cash, if you're wanting the right to terminate based on something that you find out on the title contingency, you would want to use a 22T. But since we have a long enough feasibility contingency that we're asking for on 20 days, then we have plenty of time to get a copy of the title report and have that reviewed by our buyer. So I'm not going to muddy the waters by putting a title contingency when I already have a long enough feasibility to cover me. Okay, once you get done with that, on 22D, you will check the box on number 1. There's not a lot that needs to be checked on 22D because there's not a home warranty. It's not on a homeowners association. Again, if your vacant land is part of that, you would need to maybe write in a contingency for that. But number 1 is probably the most important thing that you will check, because we do not want to be liable as real estate agents for making representations about the size of the land or the encroachments. Super, super important with vacant land, because there are a lot of encroachments and issues that we find with vacant land. And by not checking this box, it's not part of the contract, and it becomes a lot muddier when we're working with vacant land. Obviously, you don't have to check number 3. If there is, say, scroll down, Shannon, on number 4, oftentimes I would have to, if there's, brush or debris, like say there was somebody had put a old car. I had one vacant land parcel that I sold way back when, and they had an RV, and it was a pain. It was actually no problem on feasibility. It was more of a pain, and we had to get an extension because of the abandoned vehicle that was on the property. So it would actually be important for you, if there is a lot of abandoned or trash or rubbish, to check box number 4. That way it becomes part of the contract. And again, if there's stuff that the seller needs to remove, like let's play that out. Number 4, seller will remove the personal property. Any personal property remaining on the property will become the property of the buyer, and maybe retained or disposed, the buyer determines, but we'll need to perfectly make it clear on the, say that RV or that old vehicle that gets removed. Number 5 also needs to be checked, Shannon, that it's public. Is it connected? If seller represents it's connected, I don't know. It says it's in the street, so there is no connection. So we actually don't check the box. It is very raw. So we uncheck the box number 5. Or you can check it and make the seller come back, and I don't think there is anything though. That would be smart just to uncheck that. Okay, and then the other things, leased properties, if there was propane tanks or things that were leased on the property, that would get filled in. Scroll down to the bottom. On the other, let's pretend like our parcel with Michelle actually had like an old abandoned vehicle. you would end up selecting number 12. And if you're obviously licensed real estate broker, you have to disclose that as well. Seller to please remove, or yeah, buyer's licensed real estate broker in the state of Washington. Yeah, make sure you disclose if you're the owner. Okay, and the next thing you would say is seller to please remove the RV license plate XYZ, whatever you want to, from the premises. Yeah. 5 days prior to closing. That's great. Shannon's worked with me long enough to know I like to have pertinent times and specifics and who will be doing the work. So you treat this just like if you were, and again, you know this because you walk the property or your client doesn't want to mess with that. It's a pain to remove vehicles from properties. Okay, next, go to transaction forms, the form 31. Shannon, I want to just go to that real quick and then we'll end the session. Transaction forms at the top, and we'll go to 31. You guys know how to fill out 22EF. We've done that before, but I want to make sure that you understand how to fill out the 31 because that is important. Now you could, a lot of people ask me, can you just deposit the earnest money into escrow upon mutual? Like what, you know, just like a regular, yeah, you could. It's just, then you have the hassle. What if the land doesn't work? Then you have to worry about contacting escrow. They have to release it. Both parties have to sign it. It's kind of a hassle. And so with vacant land, most of the time we actually see this promissory note. So it's $1,000 goes in the top. In what county? That would be King. King goes in the second line on line 1. Yep, perfect. First American title. And then there's a star. Check the star. And I would say upon removal of 3 days following feasibility. There you go. Feasibility acceptance. That works. All of that's filled in. And then the date.
Today.
Okay. And then the buyer would sign. So that's the 31. All right. Did I cover all of the pertinent forms, Shannon? So we know. So yes, you're going to make them initial the legal. Go ahead and include, if there was supplements, go ahead and include those and have your clients initial that as well as you submit the offer, because again, you want that strength to really come through with your offer, that you've had a chance to review the items. And it's so frustrating when a seller is representing, if a listing agent representing a seller, where the buyer has asked for a feasibility and they've done no work. It's the most irritating thing as a listing agent. Aside from having the deal fall apart, it's irritating to know that, hey, we've tied up the vacant land parcel for 20 days and there has been nothing done or nothing, no movement or no questions being asked or no supplements being provided or discussion between listing agent and buyer's agent. So be very helpful and trying to gather the information and working for your client's best interest. Again, we're not going to the county or the city. We are basically negotiating, making sure that the property is going to meet their needs. If their property does not meet their needs, you send over the 90P and you get out based on disapproval of the feasibility. No questions asked. So it works just like the 35R. It's a pretty easy way to terminate based on feasibility. Once you pass feasibility, it's near to impossible to exit the contract without losing your earnest money. So be very careful and cautious and let me know if you want me to help you track those timelines or understand computation of time. We don't want you missing your feasibility removal contingency. And that's all I've got today. I'm sorry I went over, but hopefully this was helpful. Shannon, was there any other questions or things I did not cover?
No, I don't think so. But one thing to know, I know that some people get questions about it. The 90P also has how you accept feasibility as well to proceed to closing. So treat it just like you would a 35R in a residential sale, right? Where you can either accept or terminate.
Okay, and make sure you deliver to the firm as well as the listing agent, right? So if it's not going to work, make sure you have proper delivery of the documents. Okay, awesome. Hopefully that was a lot of information, very meaty, but if you have any other specific questions, let us know. We're here to help you and really expand your knowledge base and get you some more deals under contract. So have a great night and we'll talk to you guys next Monday.